I'm Mikhail. I'm working for hotels.com at the moment, and a little bit about me. I'm a coffee-addicted person. I like cats, and I'm enjoying exploring new tools and new approaches. So I'm kind of person who do a lot of the photos of the slides during the presentation. That's basically, if you're such kind of person, spend like half a minute, here's a presentation, it's already online, it's already there, make a photo, and you will have it later. So, yeah. And meanwhile, why I decided to choose this area that visualize testing using Applitools when I came to this point. It was basically my personal exploration, and yeah, as you might know, it was a hackathon hosted by Applitools last year, where they asked all the participants to implement some sort of UI test using classical approach and using Applitools, compare the feedback provided, etc. And basically it was like huge cash prizes. I wasn't nominated, but I had like a great time doing this, and basically get a lot of lesson learned from this. So yeah, let me share my story. It will be in Java, and yeah, Applitools. We know this. It's just a screenshot of the main page, where they say we are doing intelligent functional and visual testing for Visual UI. Yeah, so all of us at some point stuck with implementing tons of UI tests and dealing with a lot of the flaky ones, additional assertion, additional locators, etc., etc. So at the same point, yeah, they are awesome. You have a lot of fun, but at the end of the day, you might end up with a case when one person just do support all of those tests around 80% of the days. In my experience, it was like 2 times with my team when we just had like 400 or 500 of UI tests that we tried to support, and just at some point we even had a rota. Then some of the guys on daily basis support them, and after that we thought, are we doing things right? Is it like what we are looking for? What's inside this UI test? If we came with such legacy, how we can do things better? Is this better the thing? So first of all, those tests are necessary because they give us the highest level of confidence that our product works as it should. So it's guaranteed that our customer will see what they expected to see. But at the same time, we notice that in most of the cases, QE engineers just write in a lot of tests, a lot of UI tests just to cover one single piece, or one small single feature, like additional checkbox, an additional button, or a toggle, etc., etc. And we look on this and we notice that, yeah, you do 10, 12, 20 steps, just navigating through UI, do enormous stuff. At the end of the day, what you receive, like, hey, here's the checkbox that is displayed. Fine, test pass it. Like, the assertion point is literally fraction a second, but the prerequisites cost you like minutes and minutes. At that point, we thought, okay, it's a good example for component tests. Let's share the quality across the team. Let's come to developers saying, hey, dude, there is a case when you need to extend your pipeline with as a like unit test or maybe component test. And in most of the cases, it's like, yeah, developers like look at you at this point like, what do you want from me? Right to the report? To the report? What's it came from? Like, so we tried not to give up and just push the things forward. We like, at some point we won. At some point we learned by ourselves that we need to go and step and be as a developer and just implement one another functionality. So yeah, end-to-end tests. We need them. They provide us this business value. What else we can consider when we implement UI tests? And it turns out that we need assertions, we need to check user and maybe rely on user experience, layout. Maybe it's different layout for portrait or how we call this? Portrait and landscape, yeah, views. So you need to support this. What if your company have A/B testing implemented, and you don't have a control on top of this? So how you can just design your tests in order to support different scenarios like this? Because at some point, it will become like a certain level of flakiness. So having those things in mind, we might say, okay, what are our targets as a team, as a team, as a product? We should just short our time to release. So if we have enormous amount of assertion and there is a change within the UI, you as a QA engineer might be a bottleneck, because basically you need to address those changes before going to production, right? You need to confirm that this test works fine and they are passing. So at the same time, you can, but you should not bypass those tests, because on one hand, you might lose credibility of your customers, because this feature, this particular change, let's say in this way, wasn't tested properly, and you end up with untested feature in production. At the same time, you shouldn't delay deployment on this functionality, because otherwise, no feature in production, no money in your pocket. So how we can just decrease this time, how we can just be as effective as possible. And yeah, the key point here is like your end user approach, your product via UI. That's basically is. So one of the solutions is visual AI testing. AI here is basically just internal, some magic that do comparison of screenshots or visual stuff behind the scene. There is no magic in your code. There is nothing like that. But the idea is simple. You have a page, you make a screenshot, you compare it. Sounds easy, right? And what we have in the market, leaders is just Applitools. There are a few competitors that you can just also use, but at the end of the day, if we go here, you have enormous amount of raw assertions. Now you don't need them. Now, and even more, you don't need some support in your framework for those guys. Because what you need in your UI tests, in your UI framework, is just some locators and some functionalities that will allow you to navigate via the page. So it was quick. Demo time. Any questions so far? Cool. Oh, sorry.
Did you look at any other tools apart from Applitools?
You mean a part of Applitools?
Or did you look at any other tools? What do you see as Applitools plus other tools to address the same problem? You seem to be more about Applitools.
If I understand you correctly, so I've played with Percy.io, with Cypress.
Yeah.
Applitools also provide integration with Cypress, and the benefit of Applitools is you have really good integration with CI, with CI/CD, so you can just integrate it as part of your GitLab or Jenkins, etc., etc. At the same point, if we consider Cypress as JavaScript, but we should be like polyglots in our development. So if we have like Python, etc., etc., or like JavaScript, Kotlin, it doesn't matter. Applitools provides this functionality, and basically, if you will look on what kind of compatibility they have, it's like enormous. And during the hackathon, it was like a lot of the guys who do stuff in Kotlin, in Python, in JavaScript, and at some levels. So, in my view, it's beneficial because you don't need to ask your developers to write one or another tool, another framework. What you need to do, and basically, it's not just about writing one or another, learning something new, like a new language or something like this. You already have pretty good coverage in case of functional test, in case of UI test. The thing how you can use those pieces and make it more stable, reduce flakiness if there is some, and how you can just improve like time to market. So
yeah, I was just thinking about things like Mabel and the Spot QA. There's a few players in this capability area. I just wondered if you looked at those.
Not at the moment. Not at the moment. There are tons of them, but
yeah. I mean, I've used something called Backstock.js, which is pretty good. And a really easy one, if you want to get into it really quickly, is called Diffie. So easy in the browser, you can get it up in seconds. Very easy.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Let me somehow try to stay a little bit away from the speaker. So a little bit about the challenge that we had during the hackathon that Applitools suggests. Basically, it's still available. You can try it by your own, play with it, and see how it works. So you have a page. You have two versions of the apps. Right one and another one with a lot of the issues. There is login form, as usual. When you log in, you will see a table with something, with some data. You can just, at the top you have compare expenses, and you will see such a diagram, and you can just press this button and see another layer being displayed. At the same time, you can display some ads that basically flash. And what we have in the wrong version of the app is login form. We already see this logout form, something weird is going on. Yeah, how we can do this? The same table with broken sort. We can see that it's basically something really wrong with the comparison. And with ads. One of them is not displayed, another one changed with some beautiful bear. So, with classical approach, how you can just do this? How you can change these GIFs? The first thing that comes to my mind, okay, if there is a GIF, we can you can just do certain level of checks. It might be it should be ideally the same name of the file, the same size. If there is a difference, it might be another GIF, another ad displayed. But you might end up with such a logic. So with implementation, such a logic when you need to check the file, download it, maybe do byte by byte comparison, etc. So you should really go deeper into this area. As for the graphs, it is a third-party component. So it's a little bit tricky to go inside it and grab some details from this. The easiest way that I've decided to implement and I've decided to play, I've just used a package that do screenshots of this graph and compare them. Bottleneck and problem, you need to have both screenshots available. And if you have different dimensions within your screen, you might end up with adding more and more and more gold images. It's sort of semi-automatic process that already it's not what we are looking for. And with login form, it's something. So there are some issues that we will see during the demo, but you need to really implement. You need to really check all the titles. We will see that they explicitly change the error message, etc. So basically, I end up with implementing a lot of the checks that do unnecessary stuff and that can be easily replaced with just one-by-one comparison. So let me try to sit here and show how the things look like. First of all, when you need to integrate your Applitools into your project, what you need to do is just add in just one function with configuration. Then here's the configuration. Yeah, let's initially compare full page screenshots, and here's the APK. Done. We are there. After that, we can go to base UI test, where we say, okay, here's a configuration for Applitool, for I. It's basically what I've just presented. And in the tab, you say, okay, here's the eyes, here's the runner, and yeah, pretty much all that you need to add into your tests. Let's look on one of the examples how I did a comparison of these diagrams, and we'll see how easy it is to, for example, from implementation point of view, how easy it is to do with Applitools compared to classic approach. So yeah, here's the classic one. You say, okay, here's my, I'm here. Here's my resources, here's my images. I'm using external dependency to compare the images. I'm taking it, I'm try to compare this, having a div, and I sort the div, and then I sort the div, you just try to store some artifacts that you can potentially use later on, and in order to to assert the failure. So there are pretty much logic. And do you need all of this? Maybe not, because with Applitools you just do, hey, here's my application page. I'm going to it. I'm on login page. I'm entering username, password, login. After that, I'm moving to compare expenses page. I'm adding, for example, dataset, another one, and yeah, let me check the element. An element is basically here you return a locator of the element that represents the chart. So Applitools give you a lot of the capabilities. You can just do different kind of comparison, let's say color independence that you can just use for comparisons arts because they are blinking and the blinks are randomly generated. You can just compare elements full page. You can ignore some regions within your page. So when it might be necessary and useful, for example, I've used property-based testing there. So all the time you will see I'm generating new email address and new password. So on the page, if you compare like screenshot if you will do one-to-one comparison, it means, let me stay there. If you do one-to-one comparison, you will have this flaky part with a failure within the field that represent email address or password, because all the time it's different. So you can simply ignore this within your configuration. And yeah, now we integrated it. How we can get the results? As I mentioned previously, you have a pretty good integration with CI tools, with Jira. It's not part of this talk, but let us go to terminal. So, for example, if we launch Applitools with initial app with a valid one, let's see. I never did it with such dimension. Basically, for me, it might be something new as well. So I have a login form. It's the first test. You just assert this login form, and you see it's basically logic behind the Applitools. So you just do multiple, maybe screenshotting comparison. They just try to assert the diagram, the first one, similar with the original one. And basically, if you have Applitools allow you to group your tests by batches, so you will within the Applitools dashboard you will be able to assert those batches and see is it like what's happened within this batch. Oh, it's passed. Nice. So,
sorry, does Applitools ignore where the mouse cursor is?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And basically, if you have like an enormous page and you do like as a whole comparison of the whole page, it will automatically scroll up, down, etc. to make sure that you have the whole page screenshot. Yeah, it's a little bit tricky and maybe it takes a little bit more time to execute those tests compared to classical approach when you have like dedicated comparison. But for me, my lesson learned from this, it's really nice to have such tool in your pocket, but you shouldn't forget about classical approach, because classical approach can give you maybe more advantages in case of property-based testing, or some really easy comparisons, like if you have like 5 displayed elements within the table, on amount of rows should be all the time 5, 6, etc. You can just easily assort with classical approach compared to doing screenshots. So yeah, all the tests passed, and it's the first step. And we'll go to dashboard, refresh it. We'll see this. Here's the tests. Here's, for example, some batches, and everything is here. No baseline for this by some reason. And let us just launch the wrong app, and we'll see how it works. It's a nice point that you can just decrease your amount of your code within your tests using this tool, and it's easy to maintain because it's just the only thing that you need to care about is how you are going to compare one another element. Should you care about layout of the page, content of the page? Should be like color independent comparison, or are you care about one element or group of element, or you care just about the region? All such things that you can do with Applitools. It's pretty easy.
Do you have any direct comparisons between, I presume you have started or you have implemented this at hotels.com?
That's an interesting question. The only thing that I know that we are evaluating it. But at some point I do believe that for us it will be a really interesting thing to implement. Because if you have it's really valuable when you have the search by hotels, and what you care is like that everything is displayed properly on the page when you go directly to details of the room or details of the hotel. So page is pretty huge. If you like dealing with this on daily basis, and especially if you're a manual test engineer, it's literally you have a blinking eye. It's easy to overlook something. But this guy is like all the time when I just came to manual testing, I'm telling that we are humans. We are making errors. We are making errors by design. So we should someone who will sort of control us.
Do you envisage any overlap between, say, the component testing at from the unit front end tests like Jest, for instance, as opposed to this tool, and how maybe the two can borrow from each other, reduce tests on either side? Interesting question. I'm taking from the previous talk, obviously focusing more on the unit.
It's an interesting question because at some point I've came to this with our current implementation that basically in Java and Selenium, and I'm just thinking let's revisit all the tests that we have and how we can just what they really do those tests. Is it really component test or it's really end-to-end test? Are we care about the business flow or if we care about some small feature? If we not care about the small feature, and it's a really business flow, let's do it maybe with end-to-end. But if you go to have a look on the site of Applitools, they have tons of information and integration. It's literally a huge amount of things. And I guess the final part is that we have failed tests. Applitools by default marks them as unresolved, so you need manually came and see is it a real issue or is it like a new baseline. So let's start with login UI. So what we have here is just It just highlights the difference between baseline, the original app, and another one. So we see that we used to have a button for LinkedIn that disappeared, logout. We're now displaying logout instead of login. And we can say, yeah, that's a real failure. And let's have a look on, for example, Canvas charts, right? It's just display. Here's the difference. And yeah, you might use other integration. You might assign this issue to a person in your project, etc., etc. It was kind of an additional thing that you can try, but yeah, I didn't come to this point, to be honest. But it's really useful. You can use it. You can reduce, first of all, amount of things that you need to do in order to execute and design your UI tests. At the same point, it's easy to change, easy to use, and it's really decrease your time to market. But anyway, I'm getting to the conclusion that, yeah, there are a lot of advantages, but for me, you should consider like symbiosis of both classical and visual AI approach. Because in this case, you will have, you might achieve even highest level of confidence in your tests. And yeah, some links. There is Test Automation University. I think some of them you know about this. They have tons of resources. It's absolutely for free. If you just need to refresh your memory, like refresh your knowledge about one another tool. I'm all the time coming to this resource. Applitools itself. They also announced ultra fast grid. It's just the idea is how we can use Applitools for cross-browser testing. How we can just use one screenshot and upload to Applitools server. It will automatically render it in different browsers, and it will automatically do comparisons. So you sort of receiving cross-browser compatible tests for free. It's still on the evaluation stage. We'll see how it works when they will officially announce it. Yeah, and the last one regarding the integration with different cloud providers and CI/CD tools. So on that point, thank you and have a happy testing.